Spirit of God, come down. Spirit of God, rain down. Spirit of God, come into my life. Spirit of God, rain down. Let your fire fall on me. Oh, Spirit of God, fall on me. Spirit, fall on me. Oh, let your fire fall on me. Oh, Spirit of God, fall on me. Spirit, fall on me. I pray you rain down, rain down in my life, Lord. Rain down, rain. I pray you rain down, rain down in my life, Lord. Rain down, rain. Oh, Spirit of God.
Dear friends, last time we mentioned about the phenomenon of Joshua asking the sun to stand still. And this incident was often misinterpreted. When Galileo and Copernicus came with the new solar system, church opposed it, saying it is against the teaching of the Bible. But actually, Bible does not teach astronomy or science or physics here. It was the salvation history and a misunderstanding about the purpose of the biblical narratives. All these confusions arose. We had mentioned about it in our early classes. Okay, and now we find the people, they accept the great benefit or the grace God gave them, and they were able to defeat the Amorites and capture their kingdom. And this is the story that we find in chapter 10. And in chapter 11, we find Joshua is going to defeat the enemies who formed a coalition under the leadership of King of Hazor. And again, Joshua was able to conquer them. In chapter 12, we find a list of 31 kings conquered by Joshua. And therefore we can see, practically, he was able to conquer almost all the inner kingdoms of Palestine. But the major powerful enemies remained unconquered. The Philistines in the west, then Amalekites and Edomites in the south, Moabites, then Ammonites in the southeast, Syrians in the north, Tyre and Sidon in the northwest. And these were the powerful nations, but they were not at all touched by Israel. Therefore, we can say Joshua conquered the small countries, and the reason is clear. These nations were very powerful because they had sophisticated weaponry, whereas Joshua and the team had merely swords, shield, spear, and so on. And hence they could not defeat the nations with sophisticated weaponry like chariots and so on. And therefore they were unable to fight with them. And this is what we can say. And thus we see the conquest of Canaan is complete according to the narration of the book of Joshua. Okay, now we find in chapter 13 onwards, there is the division of the land. And the division of the land was a command given by Moses to Joshua. And the land is to be divided among the tribes according to the number of the people of the tribe. And accordingly, now Joshua began to give the land or assign the land for each tribe. And first of all, we know on the other side of river Jordan, there were already 3 tribes living there. And we will see Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh. Of course, when we say half tribe of Manasseh, what does it mean? We know Manasseh was practically the biggest in number. Therefore, they were given, half of the tribe was given the land on the east of river Jordan, in Transjordan, and the other half, they were given the land in the west. And there was also, we know, Joseph the patriarch had 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and both of them were considered as independent tribes and were given land to occupy. And therefore, we can say, even when the tribe of Levi was given no land, according to the narrative, we'll find 12 tribes are given land. And 12 tribes would include the 2 sons of Joseph too, Ephraim and Manasseh. And that is how, even excluding Levi, the other 12 tribes are there. And that is the calculation. Okay, therefore, 2 and a half tribe, they occupied the land on the other side of river Jordan. And on the west side of river Jordan, the other tribes were given land. And thus we find, okay, the land was given to Judah, Ephraim, then half tribe of Manasseh, that is half of the people of Manasseh. And then we find there are still 7 tribes left, excluding Levi. Levi was given no land, we know. We will explain it later. And now Joshua asked the remaining 7 tribes to locate the place or the land they want to conquer and own for themselves. And the land was divided equally among the 7 tribes, and the remaining 7 tribes were given the land. And that is a story we will find in the remaining chapters. Okay, the land west of Jordan was given to Judah, that is narrated in chapter 15, to Ephraim, narrated in 16, then to half tribe of Manasseh in chapter 17. And the 7 tribes, they are mentioned in chapter 18. And we will see the 7 tribes, practically we can say Benjamin, then Simeon or Simon, Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and Dan. All tribes received the land, and the story is narrated in chapter 19. Thus, from chapters 13 to 19, we find the land is allotted to various tribes by families and so on. And the land given to each tribe was considered to be their heritage in the Lord. And we had already mentioned about it earlier. Therefore, I am not going to describe it now. And the land given to them was most sacred, precious for them. And they will not give away the land. And they were not supposed to sell it out. And if at all they are in dire need to sell, it should be sold to the nearest of their relative or kin. And that was the rule. The land is not to be sold outside the clan or outside the tribe. That was the way it was understood. And when the land was divided, the Levites were given no land. And what's the reason? The Levites practically were not to live by agriculture or by doing farming. They were to live from the tithe offered by the people to God and the temple. And the priests had a share of it, and they had to live on this. Thus, the people are to contribute to the living of the Levites, and hence they were given no land for agriculture. But at the same time, they need place for living, and that we will explain the coming minutes. And therefore, the tribes were given the land, and the land was allotted by lot and so on. All the story is narrated there. And in chapter 20, we find another institution that came to be there. And there we find practically there is the city of or cities of asylum. And Joshua established cities of asylum. And what does it mean? We are familiar with the term asylum seekers, or the people coming from a different country seeking asylum in our nation. That is called asylum seekers, or people who seek refuge in our country. And what is to be done with them? But here it means something else. Cities of asylum. And it is the place of refuge, or the place where I am to take refuge in case I commit a serious sin, but unknowingly. An example will make it clear. Life for life is the principle for Israel. If somebody happens to kill another one, even if unknowingly, can be killed because of the law, life for life. Just take this example. I saw some good ripe mangoes on a tree, and I took a rather heavy stone and threw it at the mango. Unfortunately, the mango was not hit, and the stone went out of the compound and fell on the head of a passerby, and he happened to die. According to the law, life for life is the principle. Anyone who sees this can kill me because of the law. But I did not mean to do it, or I did not commit it knowingly. And then what is the way out for me? I should go or run and take refuge in the place of asylum. And I had to enter into that place of asylum, then nobody will lay hand on me. Natural juridical process will take place. There will be the trials, and if I am found to fault with, then I will be given capital punishment. But if I am not found fault with, I will be saved. And therefore, cities of asylum means it is the place or the town where I have to take refuge and live there until the trial is done. And nobody can enter here and kill me. That is the law. And therefore these places are called cities of asylum. And we also know in the temple, in the shrines, the altars had a horn-like projection in its front. And if I enter the temple and catch hold of this horn-like projection, then naturally nobody can harm me. It is the safest place for me. And that is the way of asylum or safety, we can say. Therefore, according to the direction of Moses, Joshua established the cities of asylum in all the tribes. And that is the story we find in chapter 20. The cities of asylum are established. And then in chapter 21, we find the narration of the cities of Levites. Okay, what is the meaning of that? Again, we already explained. The Levites had no place to live. No place for agriculture. But they have to live. And hence, in every tribe, cities for the Levites are to be established, where the Levites can live with their families. And they are supposed to take care of the temple affairs. And that is their ministry. But they are not to be engaged in farming or cattle breeding and so on. And these places where the Levites are allowed to live are called cities of the Levites. Moses had asked Joshua to establish cities of Levites when the land of Canaan is conquered and land is distributed among the tribes. Thus, cities of asylum and cities for the Levites are here. And therefore we find, by the end of chapter 21, there is a small narrative after the division of the land, then concluding the narrative about the conquest of the land. And therefore we can see that the story is coming to a conclusion. And now 3 more chapters are there. In chapter 22, there we find the people. Okay, when Joshua dismissed all the people and gave them the permission that they can go to the different places, their own tribes, then the people in the Transjordan area, that is Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh, the people thought, as a remembrance of the great gift of God in the form of the land, they wanted to establish an altar, and they wanted to make sacrifices to God and so on. When the other tribes heard that they have established an altar, they mistook it or misunderstood it. They thought these 3 tribes in Transjordan are going to worship some other god, and they came to fight with the 3 tribes. But some wise people from them explained the situation, and then everybody was happy, everybody accepted the new explanation, and everybody returned to their own tribes or the places assigned to them joyfully. Okay, that's the story that we find in chapter 12. And in chapter 23, we find the farewell discourse of Joshua. And Joshua's demand is simple: obey the commandments of Yahweh, and you will continue to inherit the kingdom, inherit the land. Otherwise, you may even lose the land. That was what he was reminding them. Therefore, he was always asking them to be faithful to Yahweh. He insisted on fidelity to Yahweh. And then he also commanded them two things. One, they should not fall into apostasy, that is, worship the gods of Canaan. Secondly, they should not go to marry the women of Canaanites, and they should not give their daughters in marriage to Canaanites. And if they do these two things, they will definitely be punished by Yahweh, and that will be the cause even for losing their land. And the people agreed that they would keep these restrictions, these laws given by Joshua. And that is the sum and substance of the farewell discourse of Joshua found in chapter 23. And now in chapter 24, we find the renewal of the covenant. And in Shechem, Joshua assembled all the people of Israel, and in their presence he made a covenant with them. And it was a covenant practically between God and Israel. And all the people, they read, the laws were read out to the people of Israel, and they agreed to abide by the laws, to obey the laws. And a covenant was instituted or established, uniting God and the people. And this is the covenant renewal ceremony that took place at Shechem. And this was an important step as they began their life in the new land or in the promised land. And therefore, again we can say, by doing such a thing, Joshua projects himself to be a model of, to be just like Moses himself. And that was the purpose of narrating this story, we can imagine. Therefore, this is what we can see. And in this covenant renewal ceremony, the laws were read out, and there we find the important elements in the covenant renewal ceremony. There will be, or in the laws, there will be what is called a preamble, the introductory clauses, then narration of the benevolent deeds from the side of the major party, here it is Yahweh, or the stronger party, and the list of the laws of stipulation given by the major party to the minor party. Minor party means the people of Israel. God gave the law for the people of Israel, the stipulations. And fourth, there's an agreement to read the laws once in a while, periodic reading of the agreement. That is also a condition for the covenant. And then the witnesses will be called out. Usually in covenant ceremonies, the witnesses will be the gods for the covenant between other nations. But for Israel, there is only Yahweh, no other God. And hence, here we find who are the witnesses. The witnesses will be the things of the nature the phenomenon of the nature which are of a lasting nature or lasting period. For example, a rock, a mountain, a river, and so on. And the sun and the moon, these are of lasting nature, and these will be called out as the witnesses for the covenant. And there will be some stipulations or formula and depicting or narrating the blessings and curses. If you obey these stipulations, such and such blessings will come upon you. And if you disobey, such and such curses will come upon you. And that will be the way it will be narrated or reminded to them. And this is what we can see. And therefore, this is the way how the renewal of the covenant was done. Okay, and towards the end of chapter 24, we find the narration about the death of Joshua. And we find the great leader of the people of Israel who led them into the promised land and who was the successor of Moses in a way. And he died at the age of 110. And until his death, he was so active. And let us remember once again what God said to him at the time of his call. And at that time God said, "Do not be afraid, be courageous, I will be with you, just as I was with Moses." And these words of God were totally fulfilled and observed. Yahweh was with him always. And whenever he was in trouble, Yahweh stood by him and gave him the courage. And that is why we mention about the empowerment. And Yahweh empowered him to guide the people. And even though they had their own special features like stiff-neckedness or rebellious nature and so on, we find Joshua was able to lead them according to the plan of God, and God practically gave through him the promised land. And therefore Joshua plays such an important role, and everything happened or took place according to plan of Yahweh. That's what we can say. And thus we find the book comes to a close with the narration of the death of Joshua. And now, to conclude our reflections on this book of Joshua, let us just bring into our mind a couple of messages. First of all, we can say that Yahweh has shown that he has fulfilled the promises he made to the ancestors. Therefore, he is faithful to the promises given. And Yahweh has done in the best way possible. And now what the people should do? They should be faithful to Yahweh. And that is the reciprocity required of them. And Joshua is presented as a symbol of fidelity, faithfulness. And the people of Israel are to imitate his example. We can say Joshua obeyed God with an undivided heart. The same thing is expected from the people of Israel, we can say. And Joshua is presented as an ideal leader without any flaw or mistake from his part. Always one who is beloved to Yahweh, we can say. And of course, the conquest is presented in an idealized way. It may not be the truth, because we find in the book of Judges a different picture about the conquest, and hence we can really think, okay, the conquest was not so easy an affair as it is presented in the book of Joshua. Here it is more presented. It is presented here more in a manner more idealized, That's what we can say about it. Okay, then Yahweh is exalted, and He is the only cause of the fulfillment of the promises. And the people should remember the land given them is really a gift, and it brings upon them a new mission. And what is a mission? Unless they are faithful to Yahweh and His commandments, the land will be lost. Therefore, to keep the land safe in their hands, they should continue to obey God and His commandments. Otherwise, the land will be lost. It will be attacked by the enemies and captured. And that is what we can say. At the same time, we can also say the land is not a reward or merit given to them. It is merely the gracious gift of Yahweh. That is to be very well to be understood. And we can also apply the messages from the book of Joshua to Christian life. And one of the important things we can say, Joshua practically captured 7 cities. And fathers of the church would say that the Christians are to capture or to conquer the 7 capital vices, just like Joshua captured the 7 cities. And that is their duty entrusted to them, and so on. And all the events that took place at the time of Joshua practically is leading to the history of salvation accomplished later in Christ. Or in other ways, we can say Joshua and the events narrated in Joshua lead the readers to the Christ event. And we can see again the possession of the land is equivalent to the possession of the messianic gifts. That also is to be understood in that way. And just like Joshua fought for the realization of the promise given by Yahweh, the church is now to fight for the realization of the heavenly kingdom, to fight against the negative forces and negative influences in our life, and thus spread the values of the kingdom. And what are the values of the kingdom? The values are like love, peace, happiness, justice, and so on. When we fight for these values, we are practically fighting for the realization of the kingdom. And in this instance, we should also remember the words of our beloved Pope Francis. He always reminds the Christians of today that we are to go to the marginalized, the peripheries of the society, and extend our love, justice, concern, and so on to the poor, illiterate, the marginalized ones. And that is the real following of Christ. And when we are ready to do like it, we will be really the followers of Christ according to Him. And in short, we can say the book of Joshua gives us a very beautiful picture how we are to proceed in our Christian life. And that is the message for us today. The messages the book of Joshua gave to the people of Old Testament is repeated in a different way to the people of the New Testament, the people of the church. And hence, we are to follow Christ and His laws as best as we can, and thus realize the salvation achieved by Christ for us. And that is our mission today, and that is what we are to be empowered for. And therefore, let us accept the guidelines, the revelations given the book of Joshua, and let us be guided by the Spirit so that we may be able to achieve whatever we can in order to realize the great mystery of the salvation of humanity. Okay, hereby we close our reflection on the book of Joshua. And in the next session, we will begin with the book of the Judges. Okay, thank you and God bless you.
Loving God, we thank you for the blessing of reading your word together. We ask that these words of life, truth, and hope would continue to impact us in the days ahead. May your love and grace follow each of us, refreshed and blessed by you. Amen.